Okay, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your host, J.R. Stewart, or co host.
And I'm your co host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome, everyone, and happy Hump Day, Wednesday evening.
Yes, and we want to give a big shout out and big thanks to Liquid for producing our theme music, our intro music. So if you guys like it, give us a big thumbs up and a shout out. And let's take care of the pay the bills first. So we'd like for you to subscribe, to like, and please share. We need to grow our channel, and we can't do it without you. So, please take the time to hit the share button, hit the notification button, so when new videos are uploaded, which happens every Wednesday, when we're coming to you live at 9 p.m. Central Time, videos are uploaded shortly after that. If you missed the show, you can always go back and watch it. And please spread the word. So, Tom, with that being said, let's dive right on into the topic for tonight. And the question
Absolutely.
is the big question. So, will blacks? I think blacks have an important role this election. They potentially could be the tipping point between Republican and Democrat. And the question is, will they take advantage of this opportunity to make their vote relevant, or will we continue to do what we've done in the past, which is give our vote away to the Democrat Party? What say you?
Well, Jimmy, I think that, for those who are in the voting electorate, it's going to come down to who they feel is has a platform and best represent their interests. I think black folks have always had a voting block in American electoral history, and it just matters really, what candidates and what parties are speaking in their best interests, what they feel folks have done for them, and quite frankly, there's been a lot of attention spent on the black female vote, over the last few years because they are very strong and loyal voting bloc. So it will be very interesting. There's been a lot of stuff going on both sides of the campaign. In addition to that, as always, there has because of the risks associated with voting places. I mean, we talk about our state of Texas, Jimmy. I think there is one absentee ballot space or voting space in per county. Otherwise, I think one in Dallas County, one in Tarrant County, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of intriguing factors that are going to be going on that are going to determine the outcome of this race.
Okay, well, Tom, I don't know about that. I mean, I early voted. I There was a mail drop off. People who wanted to drop their ballots off, and I don't think there was a problem with people getting there or finding the location. But I will say this: I noticed that you mentioned "feel" a number of times in your response, and to me, that has always been the issue: is that the black voter feels rather than think. And because we are a feeling group and everything comes down to emotions, then we're not thinking about what's best for us. And as a result, we allow ourselves to be used as pawns, voting pawns, to be harvested every 4 years with the use of racism. Also, what I have to do is come along and say that other person over there is racist, and we get all excited and worked up. And so we're not thinking about what our best interest is. We are feeling the what we believe is some fight against the mystical or the mystical boogeyman out there, Mr. Charlie slash racism, whether you think it's institutional or systemic or otherwise. And as long as we are playing the racism game, we're not advancing. Our schools are not getting fixed. Our streets are not getting improved, and the economic base in our communities are not improving.
Well, Jimmy, I can't disagree with you in terms of feelings coming into it. That is a human characteristic that has been around since the beginning of time. And quite frankly, when you look at the rhetoric going on either side of this campaign, I understand the rational side versus the emotional side, the art versus science. But the reality of it is that is a human emotion. So, when something is said by one or other party that gets somebody's in their feelings, they're going to naturally respond to that. And quite frankly, that goes on both sides of the equation. Otherwise, you wouldn't have all these folks getting up in each other's face the way that they have around this country, for the last several years, the last decades.
So you believe both sides play the racism game?
Jimmy, the
You
foundation of
think
the country
you
was
think
built
Republicans
on.
motivate blacks to vote for them using racism?
Repeat the question again.
Do you think Republicans motivate blacks to come vote for them playing the racism game?
I don't know if you would say that motivating them playing the racism game, but I would say that on both sides of the equation, a lot of rhetoric and or campaign jargon that's going on, whether you look at commercials, whether you look at the campaign strategies, it goes on both sides, whether you're
So
talking about
we're
the
not talking
Democrats
about
or Republicans.
strategies. We're not talking about rhetoric.
But what
That
you
goes
have
without
to
saying
understand, Jimmy, is
that a
that
campaign
is
has to have rhetoric and a strategy.
Jimmy,
Let's just
if you are,
campaign.
if you are,
This is addressing racism.
Jimmy,
Is racism used by both sides? I'm just a yes or no question. Is it used by both sides to motivate blacks to come out and vote? Yes or no?
Jimmy, I said emotion, and racism is a part of that. But
Yes,
emotion
it is. So is it used by both sides? Yes or no? That's a simple question,
Jimmy,
Tom. I don't know why you keep skating around it.
I'm not skating around anything, Jimmy. But racism is a part of the equation on both
Is
sides.
it
of the equation.
used by? You said it was used by
If you
both
want to talk
sides.
about Jimmy,
I just
if
want
you're
to
telling me,
clarify.
wait a minute, time out. Let me finish. If you're telling me that ration and cerebral intellect are the primary drivers of this campaign or the last campaign or the last campaign before that, you're mistaken. It is
Tom,
everybody is not. Everybody
I
is
choose
not
my
putting a
words
T-chart.
very carefully.
Everybody is not putting a T-chart on their paper and
Okay.
analyzing.
I
everything
choose
and
my
making a
words
decision
very
based on that.
carefully.
That is just not the way it works, Jimmy.
And so obviously you were hearing something different because I choose my words very carefully. So I'm going to repeat myself yet again. Do you think, because you said both sides use the rhetoric and the strategy, and so do you think, so this is my question, so don't read anything else into it. This is what I'm saying. Do you think both sides use racism to motivate blacks to come vote for them?
Jimmy, I answered that question already, and I said
It
yes.
was a yes
it's
or
used
no.
by both sides. Jimmy, I answered that question 3 times now. I said yes, it's used on both sides.
So racism motivation to get blacks to come vote for him is used by both sides. Okay.
I would say, Jimmy, if you want to talk about either side of the equation, it may be a different strategy based upon what your appeal is to a particular demographic. But yes, it is used by both sides, and it has been used by both sides in the entire electoral history of this country, Jimmy.
It has not, Tom.
Yes,
that's
it
a
has,
sad
Jimmy.
testimony.
If you look at the history of this country, including this campaign season.
First of all, Tom, what Republican is coming to the black area claiming that Democrats are racist as a means to get you to vote for them? I mean, Democrats do this all the time. They campaign on racism. But I'm trying to figure out, when has Republicans done this? You said it happens on both sides, so when does it happen?
Okay, Jimmy, did you watch the debate last week?
Yes, I did.
This wasn't something that he had to say, but Donald Trump himself, on national television, says he is the least racist person in this entire room.
That's what he said, yes.
And if that is not a bait on racism, I don't know what is. I
How
don't know
is
what
it
you
a
call
bait,
it.
Tom? How is that? I'm sorry. How is that to
If that
defend
is
your
not a bait
character?
on racism,
How is that?
I mean, no one was asking him. He said, "I am the least racist person in this room." Matter of fact, he said, again, this was a part of his whole rhetoric about he's done more for black folks than anybody,
Yes,
possibly with the exception of Abraham Lincoln.
No. Even with Abraham Lincoln, he's still done more for blacks than any other president in the history of America.
That's not true, Jimmy.
Okay, then which president's done more?
Jimmy, if we look...
Simple question, Tom. Which president has done more?
Jimmy, if we're talking about political empowerment of black folks.
What president has done more, Tom? It's a simple question.
Jimmy, if you will let me finish.
Just give me a name.
Jimmy, you keep
Tom,
interrupting.
we don't have time for a whole dissertation.
Jimmy,
that's how all our time gets eaten up every week.
I can
Just
tell
give
you
me a
one person,
name.
Jimmy.
Just name a president. That's it. Just name one. Give me a name. Who has done more? Just give me a name.
Jimmy, if you're gonna let me finish, let me finish. But stop interrupting. LBJ signed something called the Voting Rights Act in 1965. If we're talking about the political enfranchisement of black people in America, who before that time, quite frankly, did not have the right to vote, and that's including the Civil Rights Act of 1865, that one piece of legislation by itself, Jimmy, completely shifted the table for black folks. Just
So,
that
Tom,
that one piece of legislation by that one president.
okay.
We're not talking.
First of all,
I didn't even say the Civil Rights Act. I said the Voting
okay,
Rights Act.
you said
Quite
that.
frankly, you could not with the Civil Rights Act do even 20% of what you could do politically for black folks with the Voting Rights Act of 1965. One president, one piece of legislation.
Okay, so you're heralding the nigger calling LBJ as the greatest president for black folk. Okay, did you give me a name?
I didn't say that. What
Finally,
I did
you
say,
gave me a name. That's what you said,
Jim,
LBJ.
Jim,
And
what I did say,
Tom,
Jimmy,
can I
Jimmy,
speak now?
Jimmy,
You
will
gave-
you let me finish?
I'm talking now. I let you spoke.
Okay, go
You
ahead,
gave me
go ahead.
LBJ. I asked you for a name. You gave me LBJ in the Civil Rights
You
Act.
said did something for. You
Yes.
said I did something for. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay. So the question is, why in the world would Republicans have to pass a Civil Rights Act in 1956, in 1865? Why would we have to add amendments to the Constitution pushed by Republicans if everything was so great? The answer to your own question, Tom, is that things were not great. But the Voting Rights Act of 1865, why was it passed? Because Democrats were stopping blacks from voting. Why do we need so many Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Acts if we were living in a nation of angels? If LBJ was so great, why couldn't he just pass this and get it done? Why wouldn't him and his party just do the right thing? Why do we have to pass any more laws to give blacks the rights that they already had amended to the Constitution and granted to them? Why? Because that same skank party was denying blacks the right to vote. So don't tell me how great LBJ was for giving us the Voting Rights Act, which his own party voted against. I'm talking now, Tom.
Single-handedly, the Democratic Party is responsible for all of that. Okay, that's what you're saying. Right?
Well, first of all, you forget,
Right?
Tom, that we had a period called Reconstruction where blacks got elected to Congress, where blacks helped start many of the Republican parties in the South, where blacks started businesses, schools were opened up, and universities were opened up for blacks, not because of any Democrats who helped out, because this was all a Republican Reconstruction effort, and even historians who are not friendly to Republicans have stated that this period of Reconstruction was the greatest progressive period for blacks. And Lyndon Baines Johnson wasn't around during this time. So obviously the historians don't agree with your assessment that somehow Lyndon Baines Johnson was the greatest president to do something for black people.
Jimmy, I think what I don't want you to do is cross my words. You asked me what president, okay, your claim is that President Trump has done more for black people than any other president, including Abraham Lincoln. You said name one president who has done as much as Donald Trump. I never said the greatest president in U.S. history. You just asked me to name a president who's done as much.
And you gave me Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Exactly. I never said he was the greatest president in U.S. history.
How am I mischaracterizing your words?
You said that I said he was the greatest president in U.S. history. I never said
That's
that.
the greatest for black people,
Name
Tom.
me one person who did at least as much as Donald Trump. That's what I named.
So he was not the greatest president for black people?
I never said that. No.
Oh, okay. Then
You asked me to say, tell me one president who has did as much as Donald Trump.
Okay.
I never said he was the greatest president in U.S. history.
He's been the greatest president for black people.
What I said is,
I understand, Tom. You don't have to clarify. We're good.
Okay.
You said
All
it.
right.
So Trump says he's been the best president for black people since Abraham Lincoln. I disagree with him. I think he's been the best president, period, for black people. And I
Everybody's got a right
asked
to
you
an
to give me,
opinion.
you disagreed. I asked you to give me who's been better. You said Lyndon Baines Johnson. But now you're backtracking and saying,
No,
but
Jimmy,
he's not
don't
that
mince my
great.
word. I didn't backtrack. You asked me, tell me someone who has done as much. Period. That's what I answered you.
Okay,
You
so
said, tell me someone who's done as much. That's what I
so
answered
in
you.
addition to giving you the Civil Rights Act of 1860, the Voting Rights Act of 1865, didn't Lyndon Baines Johnson also give you the war on poverty? Haven't we attributed the destruction of the black family to the welfare state, the running fathers out of the home at a time when black children, 75% of black children were in a home with a mother and a father, and then the war on poverty started, given to us by Lyndon Baines Johnson, and now we have only about 25% of black children being raised in a home with a mother and a father, and we attribute that mostly to what? Oh, the welfare state, the war on poverty that ran black fathers out of the home. But yet now you still telling me how much he did for black people. But anyway, Tom, we have to move on because the point of the show is blacks being a tipping point, and whether we're going to use this power, the chance that we have for this election to become relevant, or we're going to stay irrelevant. If we continue to vote for one party at 95%, we will stay irrelevant.
Jimmy, I can tell you that regardless of what party we vote for, whether that be Democrat or Republican, we will be irrelevant as long as we don't control our economy. We will be irrelevant as long as we don't control our jobs, creating jobs for our own. We will be irrelevant as long as we continue to be codependent on any group for anything having to do with our economics and not controlling our destiny. It doesn't matter what party you vote for, Democrat or Republican. If you don't control the factors that generate wealth for your community, if you don't control the factors that generate jobs for your economy, if you don't control the factors that control your destiny, it doesn't matter whether you're voting Democrat or Republican. It's going to be the same song. It's practically always been the same song.
That is a sad testimony, Tom, because Democrats have run the inner cities, they've run our schools for black people, they've run them into the ground. These are the worst school systems in the world, not just in America. So it does make a difference as to who you vote for. The infrastructure of the inner city where black people live is the worst in America. If you're lucky, you can get a job, go to school, get a job, and escape the inner city and move to the suburb and have a decent quality life for yourself and for your kids. The answer should be that we need to make some changes to our voting pattern. The people who run our schools, that needs to change. The people who run our cities, they run them into the ground, that needs to change. These police forces that you complain about and riot about are run by, Democrat city councils, Democrat mayors, Democrat police chiefs. But yet you continue to tell me, as you complain against these things, that it does not matter, but yet, I don't see you advocating for a change of any of these governmental systems. If it doesn't matter, Tom, then give Republicans a chance to run your inner cities and see what happens. If it truly doesn't matter, give them a chance. What would be the harm? What would be the harm in saying we need to split our vote and give Republicans a chance to run your cities if it doesn't matter?
You telling black folks to give Republicans a chance.
You said it doesn't matter.
Instead
doesn't
of
matter or not.
Again, when black folks switch from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, they did it for a specific reason.
What was that reason, Tom?
Wait a minute. If they're going to switch from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, they're going to do it for a very specific reason. Giving them a chance is not a reason. But the reality of it is, folk have to see something. Black folks were part of the Republican Party for 100 years because of what? The Emancipation Proclamation. And
not
then,
true, Tom.
Jimmy, again, the Emancipation Proclamation,
not true,
which freed the slaves under a Republican president at the time, is what drove folks to the Republican Party because that was a part of their freedom.
First of all, Tom, your math is a little bit off. So let me just correct you, which I was a full-time job doing sometime. So the blacks voted
Jimmy,
for and supported.
Jimmy, are you trying to tell me
Hold
That
on, let me
Abraham
finish and I'll tell you
Jimmy,
what I'm
Jimmy,
telling
Jimmy,
you.
Jimmy,
If
was
you just
Abraham
hold
Democrat?
on,
Was Abraham Lincoln a
hold on,
Democrat?
Tom. Let
Jimmy,
me
time
tell you
out.
what I'm telling
Was
you
Abraham
because
Lincoln
you
a
put words
Democrat?
into my mouth all the time. So let me just tell you what I'm
Okay.
telling you. So just listen for a second. So blacks voted in support of the Republican Party up until 1932 with the when Hoover ran against FDR. That's when blacks went from 65% voting for Republicans to 75% voting for Democrats, and they're never going back. So that's not 100 years. I just want to correct you on the math. That's only about 60 years, 65 years. So it's not 100 years. But anyway, go ahead and make your other misstatement and see, and I'll correct it if I have to.
Jimmy, don't be a Republican. Okay. When I
Huh?
say don't be Republican, don't be a Republican and always trying to lift yourself up by tearing somebody else down. Okay.
Who's tearing somebody down, Tom?
Jimmy, you're baiting, talking about make another mistake or do this. Let's have a
Tom,
conversation.
I am
I'm
pointing.
and what you,
Okay,
and what you have you
tell
did not flip,
me.
Jimmy. Jimmy,
We
you
can
did
get
not
down to the
flip.
bottom. We can get
You
down to
did
the root
not
cause of
you
this,
did not
Tom.
flip, Jimmy,
Are
from
we going to
65.
squander the
Jimmy,
opportunity?
Jimmy,
Yes or no?
if we want to talk facts, we did not flip from 65% Republican to 75% Democrat in one election cycle.
Yes, you
All right, you
did.
tell me.
Sure, you did.
Jimmy, Jimmy, no.
Look at Tom. Look at the
Jimmy,
results of the 1932 election, and then look at the results of the 1936 election. One election we flipped.
Jimmy, you said one election cycle, right?
One election cycle. Look it up, Tom. 1932 to 1936. We flipped. One election cycle. Yes.
Okay.
I know what I'm talking
Jimmy,
about here, Tom. So, but the bigger question is, where do you go? What city are you moving to give your children a better education that's run by Democrats?
Jimmy,
What city?
Jimmy, let's be clear. There's a reason that most black folks are in large cities. When you look at the electorate of most large cities, if you look at the Northeast, some of the Midwest, a few in the South, black folks went to large cities, one, to escape from lynching, to escape from Jim Crow in the South. And so you obviously had the mass migration of black folks to the Northeast, to the Midwest, eventually to the West, right? Most of these folks were not going to rural. Most of these folks were not going to rural areas. They were going to larger cities for
And the
factory
sun will
jobs. For
rise
opportunity.
tomorrow, Tom. There's a point to, I guess, all of this. And the sun
You know
will
what,
rise.
Jimmy? If you're not gonna let me finish, just go ahead
I'm
and
letting
say.
you finish. I'm just trying to understand the
But,
relevance of it.
but you keep interrupting. You talk about Democrats of running cities in the town, and the idea is this, Jimmy. Black folks are in large mass in large cities because of opportunities for new jobs. Okay, when you look at the middle of the 20th century and you look at the flip from black folks from Republicans to the Democrat, which ultimately culminated up to this point was cemented by the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. There has not been that significant of legislative empowerment by any party, either party, since that point in time. That is why black folks continue to vote predominantly Democrat as opposed to Republican. If you look at what Donald Trump,
so I need to cut you off in the interest of time because we're going to get a couple of the chat questions in here. So this question is to you. It says, Tommy, in all the cities that are crumbling, Baltimore, Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, LA, are under Democrat, and we've got Seattle, Portland, a bunch of other cities, are under Democrat control. If we want to change, we need to do something different. So you go ahead and respond directly to the chat line, Tom. Tell that we don't have to do anything different. We just keep doing what we're doing, and things are going to get better.
What I'm telling you and what I'm telling whomever the person who sent the question in is that I am not going to deny that obviously when it comes to certain cities, you mentioned Baltimore, you mentioned Detroit, you didn't mention Atlanta, but you mentioned a couple of other areas. Let's be quite clear about this. It is not giving our power to somebody else to rule over us that is the answer. What I said 20 minutes ago is as long as we put our destiny, our future, our economics, our job growth in somebody else's hands, we will always be slaves at the end of the day. What I'm suggesting to you, regardless of where we are, we have to control the economics of our community. We have to control job creation, and just giving another party a chance isn't the answer. We have to control our own economics, which means we
Yeah,
have to
Tom,
build our own
that
economy.
economic advancement just means you move
The
to the
challenge is this.
suburbs and escape the city. Hey, we got another question on the chat line. So I'm going to give this to you. LBJ also signed in the War on Poverty, causing women to marry the government instead of having a man in the house. This was the beginning of the destruction of the nuclear family. Go ahead and respond to that person, Tom. Tell them how great the LBJ was for black people.
Jimmy, if you look at this nation, prior to the Voting Rights Act, if you look at the disenfranchisement of black folks who could legally or illegally be stopped from voting, the first part of your empowerment in this country is the right to vote, which quite frankly, we did not have in this country until 1965. What I did not say is that, again, LBJ was the greatest president. You asked earlier, tell me something that anyone else has did other than Trump that would be that great for black people. That piece of legislation by itself empowered black people nationwide. Number two, you want to focus on LBJ, but you don't want to talk about Reagan's war on drugs and what that did to black people. Yes, then we can talk about Bill Clinton and his war on crime and that legislation with that. And so what I'm telling you, Jimmy, it's going both sides. For you to just pigeonhole one particular party or one particular president in terms of what has happened to black people, Jimmy, that is an unfair statement.
I need to correct you once again. Bill Clinton may have signed it into law, but let's not confuse anything. Go back and listen to Joe Biden, Jim Crow Joe Biden's own statement. He was an architect. Hold on, let me finish now. Let me finish. You mentioned some other presidents, so I just want to correct you. You mentioned Bill Clinton and the crime bill.
And I mentioned Ronald Reagan.
Okay, so I'll get to that. So Bill Clinton simply campaigned on adding 100,000 new police officers to the police force around the country. That's all he wanted. He went to Jim Crow Joe because Joe was the go-to guy for crime bills. It wasn't just the Clinton crime bill. Every crime bill that you go, and this is his own testimony. He's written and architected every crime bill while he was in the Senate. He was the go-to guy. He's done more to shape the criminal justice system in America than anybody else. So don't just limit it to just one crime bill and blame it on Bill Clinton.
Jimmy, if you were listening to me, I didn't limit it to one crime deal. What I was starting was a series of bills.
Okay, then let me get to my series. Let me get to my series of responses then.
It wasn't just LBJ.
So it's not just me cutting you off. You're not cutting me off because I'm getting to my series of the responses to your point. And as far as the war on drugs, my father was a drug lord. But that was his life. He made it clear that was his life, and that was not to be my life. I don't care if you come bring 100 kilos of coke and put them on my sidewalk in front of my house. I will pass it up as I leave in my house. I will come back. It will still be sitting there. Just because the drugs are there, I'm not obligated to do anything with it other than call the trash collector to come pick it up off my sidewalk. So this thing about Ronald Reagan and the war on drugs, we don't have to participate in the drug business. We can easily solve that, Tom. Just stop selling drugs, stop doing drugs, and we move on in life. But you don't want to talk about quality education, job investments in the inner city, which Trump has done, $75 billion in economic development investments in black areas, fixing the sentencing guidelines brought to you by... Let me just finish. I know you don't want to hear this.
Jimmy, $75 billion. Tell me exactly where that $75 billion went and how that benefited black people directly.
Well, Tommy, you need to go do your research. We don't
no,
have
I'm asking
time,
you.
right?
I'm asking you.
We have a lot of businesses. Yeah, you have a lot of businesses that were.
But that $75 billion.
You have, Tom, I'm trying to answer for you if you just be quiet for a second.
Okay.
So you have a lot of construction of businesses and homes and apartments that were built on that money. So there was a lot of economic development. It takes a lot to get someone to invest in an area where people are burning things down. You don't know how hard that is. You don't put your money into these areas. And in fact, you talked about economic opportunity, and that's what black people need. I don't disagree with you. But the reality is, Tom, as soon as someone makes more than $1 just over broke and they can leave the inner city, they're going to move to the suburbs. they're not going to keep their economic dollars right there in the black community. They're going to take their black ass and get out of there as quickly as they can. And don't be in the front. Don't be in front of the door when they hit it, because you're going to get run over. And that's just reality. So we can talk about all this economic activity, but the point it still comes down to, Tom, that there's a basic question. Are we going to squander this opportunity to split our vote, yes or no?
Jimmy, you didn't answer my question. Tell me how this $75 billion that you claimed that is directly helping black folk help black folk.
Go research it, Tom.
No, I'm asking you since you know.
Go read. I don't have time to go over it all in this one little show. We're running out of time, Tom. And that's not the. I tell you what. Why don't we do this? We will table it, and we will talk about it next week, and we can talk about the $75 billion if you want to. So right now, there's not enough time left to talk about the Economic Empowerment Zone and what they have done to lift people up. Okay, so the question now in the chat line is, what is your suggestion as to how to take control of our own destiny by having control of jobs and etc. The reality is that until folks start looking at things different, start realizing that they're not victims. See, victims don't win. They're not victors. I mean, our people are victims. We've been programmed to be victims. You can call it being programmed to be niggers, you can call it whatever you want, but the reality is we have been programmed to be victims, which is why racism works so well, because we are emotional people who do not think. You cannot think when you're emotionally unbalanced. And that's by design. The other side do not want you to think about what they haven't done for you. You give them your vote every election, 95, 96%. We are monolithic. Like Jim Crow Joe said, these black people are simpletons. The Hispanics are diverse, but blacks are not like those diverse Hispanics who split their votes between both parties, which is why you have people out there campaigning in Hispanic areas speaking Spanish. No one comes to the black city speaking Ebonics, other than Hillary talking about she got hot sauce in her purse. But for the most part, that's just patronage. Nobody takes black people serious. The Democrat Party don't take them serious. Why should they? You're going to give them their vote anyway. And like Jim Crow Joe says, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Like Chancey Handler said to 50 Cent, you can't vote for Trump because you black. So this is the program and this is the message that is well received by your white slave masters who tell you every day that you cannot vote for Republicans because you're black. You're our property. We made you into what you are. It took a long time to get you to this state. Now that we have you in this state, we're not letting you folks get off this plantation that easy. It's not going to be that simple. You get ridiculed, you get talked about, you get put into a box, you get shamed into going back to the plantation. And like Harriet Tubman said, she could have freed tens of thousands more slaves if she wanted to. But those Negroes were afraid to leave the plantation, thought they had a good situation. Just like many folks today think they have a good situation on these inner city plantations, trapped in poverty, trapped in, so we can keep dreaming about that pie in the sky of this economic development that's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen, Tom. We can talk about it, we can dream about it, but it's not going to happen. And you know why it's not going to happen? Because we talked about it before. Black people don't trust black people. You can't have that kind of economic critical mass growing when you don't have trust for the black business sector. Let a black business mess your food order up. You'll never go back. But let a white business mess your food order up. You're more than willing to forgive them and go back. There's a difference. There's a reason why we're never going to catch up with other groups. The Hispanics have passed us up. The Indians are passing us up. Hell, the Africans, who are only 0.8% of the population, are damn near on our tails right now. We've been here over 400 years, and we don't have nothing to show for it, Tom. We've been turning to bitter, feeling, emotional creatures who can't think their way through an election. And you think elections don't matter, but yet you won't sign off on supporting.
Stop. No, stop.
Go ahead.
Not once I ever said elections didn't matter.
You said if they all the same, Tom, it doesn't matter who you vote for.
No, Jimmy. When did you hear me say elections don't matter?
Okay, when you said that it doesn't matter because both parties are the same. You can attribute everything to both parties.
Jimmy, I did not say elections don't matter. What I did say, don't miss my words, is that whether we vote Republican or Democrat, if we don't control the economics of our community, if we don't control the jobs that are created for our people, if we don't control our destiny, it doesn't matter whether we vote Republican or Democrat. That is in reference to giving the Republicans a chance versus giving or staying with Democrat. At the end of the day, whether you are voting for Republicans or Democrats, if you don't create jobs for your own people, if you are not controlling the economics for your community, it's the same thing. I never said once that voting does not matter. I am the last person to say that.
You said it doesn't matter what
I'm going to tell you this. If we don't control our destiny,
it's not going to matter, Tom.
Exactly.
It's not going to matter, and you know that's not going to happen. So you're selling a pipe dream now.
Now that's where we're wrong. That's where we're wrong.
It's not going to happen, Tom. So can we fix the schools?
Entitled to your opinion.
How is economic development going to fix the schools for our kids who get a terrible education? It's not. Because all economic development is going to do is give you the ability to move to the suburbs where they have good schools. Who's moving back into the inner city for economic development? And because when you go there and let there be one incident where a white cop shoots a black person, you have the potential of having your business, your life savings, your investment burned to the ground or looted. And people say, well, there's insurance.
Let me ask you this. In your opinion, what determines the outcomes of political elections more likely than not?
The determinant factor in any election, Tom, is getting more votes in your opposition.
And how do you get to the getting of those votes?
Well, you campaign.
And how do you pay for campaigns?
Hopefully you pay for them by being honest about what you promised that you would do if people entrust the power in you. But we know that doesn't happen.
At the end of the day, Jimmy, economics and money buys elections more times than not, right?
No, not all the time, because Hillary had $1 billion in the last election. Trump had
I said more times than not.
Well, it can, but still you have to be a good candidate.
And you have to consider that when we talk about this, a lot of what we talk about, even though we focus on the presidential elections, there is one saying that politics are local, and so your local politics are just as important as the national politics.
And that's why I have called for electing a Republican school board in your inner city. Why run to the suburbs where Republicans control the schools to give your child a better education when you can get a better education for the black kids right there in the inner city if they would just change the leadership and the composition of the school boards? And I can't even get you to join me in this call to switch, because to you it doesn't matter. Both parties are the same.
What I don't need you to do is to misconstrue my words. We're talking about.
Then you're gonna come join me in my call for school board composition to change.
And maybe you're just misunderstanding what I'm saying, or misunderstanding why I am saying what I'm saying. And I know we don't have that much time because we're hitting on to.
Yeah, it's okay. We can go over. We're already over.
But the reality of it is, Jimmy, economics is what buys and sells elections. You know that. I know that. Not every election, but most of them, yes. And so if you are on the bottom of the totem pole economically in your household, in your communities, you don't have any businesses that are driving the outcomes of small elections and or larger elections. You're going to have a very difficult time influencing elections. At the end of the day, what I'm saying is that until we control the economics of our community, until we control jobs into our community, to a point, what we've talked about before, until we begin to rebuild the economics, which begins with the family structure and begins with businesses. You're right. You're exactly right when you talk about it ain't gonna happen. But I have not sold out on it ain't gonna happen.
Tom, you know what? Even if it did happen, that's not gonna fix the school system. I know it and you know it. People, once again, if everybody, I don't know, you take a swath
Jimmy,
of,
it
hold
may
on, let me
not be
finish my
exclusive,
statement.
but I can
Just let me
tell you this
finish.
much.
Just let me
When
finish.
you
If
when
we
you
go through and plow
go ahead
up,
and I'll finish.
hold on, Tom, just slow it down. If we go through and plow up in the poorest areas of town, grab 100 people, give them each $1 million each. Not one penny of that money, $100 million, is going to go into improving the area that they live in. They're going to take their money, they're going to move to the suburbs, buy cars, get rims that spin, buy gold chains, get bling, get everything, but none of that money is going to end up improving the conditions of the inner city where they just came from. That is human nature. So even if we somehow bought into this economic development that you keep talking about, that you believe is going to happen, which we both know is not going to happen, even if it did happen, those people are going to suck that money out and move to the suburbs. The people who have business in the inner city now don't live in the inner city. They just make money there. They live in the suburbs. They go to the places that are run by good governance. They have good schools, good streets, low crime. This is where they take their wealth and move to. They don't stay in the inner city with their money, unless you're a drug dealer and you don't have any place to hide it or launder it or clean it up. Otherwise, everybody else takes their money and leave. So that's not going to improve the school system. So even if you had this economic development that you're talking about, utopia, the school system in the inner city would still suck because the people there allow the schools to suck. People in the suburbs who demand good schools for their kids get what they pay for. They pay higher taxes for those schools. They demand better quality. And that's reality. Black folks don't demand anything, and they're okay because they believe that it's their duty to vote for one party. And as long as one party is controlling your schools, controlling your streets, controlling the zoning, the businesses that come there, the economic activity. I mean, I just went to a couple of meetings for economic development for the city. I was upset that these fools had $20 million for economic development to help businesses grow and come to my city, and somehow they didn't spend all of it. They had $2 million left over that they're going to push into next year. When I look at the list of companies that are on the list to be helped next year, none of them are black owned. None of them are. I said, wait a minute. How in the hell are black folks complaining about a lack of funding, and you have $2 million to give away, and you're not even applying for the money? You're not even putting a proposal to go get the money. But yet you're complaining about a lack of access to it. So, Tom, this economic development that you're talking about, yeah, dude, it's not going to happen. Because I don't care how much money you put up, how many trillions you put up into a fund right now today, black folks are not going to go apply for it to do anything with it to uplift themselves. And the ones who do are the ones who are already out of the inner city. They already live in the suburbs. And all you're going to do is enrich their lives in the suburbs and not improve the inner city whatsoever. The tax base won't improve. The crime won't improve. Policing won't improve. Trash pickup will not improve. Nothing in the inner city is going to improve. Period. And so why you gave me the challenge to figure out what happened to the $75 billion, my challenge to you, and I think one of the chat line came in asking the same question, what happened to the $1 billion that President Obama gave to the city of Baltimore to improve the black area? What happened to the almost $1 trillion that Obama had for shovel-ready projects to improve the infrastructure of America? And all we looked up when the money was all gone is a bunch of highway signs. Where did all the money go? So I can point to tangible things that the economic zones have produced, but once again, Democrats in control of money to improve the condition of people and the black lives. The money just disappears, no improvement whatsoever. So we'll cover that next week when we come back. You'll tell me what happened to the money in Baltimore that Obama gave them to improve the black condition. I'll take what happened to the $75 billion of economic money that went into the black, for the economic zones that went into black areas or inner city areas.
All right,
how about that? Deal?
Got a plan.
So we both have some research we have to do. Let me see. There was one more question for me. So Tanya writes in, where did the $75 billion go to help the black community? We will answer that next week. I promise you. We're going to devote the entire show to the economic zones and whether they pay dividends or doing anything. But I want to point out that $75 billion was private money. That was not government money. So the money that Obama gave Baltimore, that was public money. Um, okay. So anyway, I don't know if we answered the major question is whether we're going to take this opportunity to flex our muscles and be the tipping point to make ourselves relevant in future elections, or are we going to continue to give all our support to one party and continue to be irrelevant to both? What say you, Tom? Maybe we can get just a yes or no answer.
You start with empowering yourself, Jimmy, not a party.
Okay, so we stay the course, or you say what are you saying? Well, the question wasn't about empowerment. The question was about whether we're going to flex our muscle or not in the election.
Empower yourself first. Everything else takes care of itself.
So, okay, I'm going to take that. You've been asked twice that you don't want to answer the question. So I'm going to answer it.
I answered the question earlier, but empower yourself first.
Okay, empower yourself first. But we're talking about the election next week. Are we gonna flex our muscle, be the tipping point, or are we going to stay the course and do what we've always done?
If you're asking me if you think
that's
if
a
I
binary
think
choice.
Wait, let me finish. If you're asking me if I think black folks are going to flip to the Republican Party in this election cycle, no.
Okay, so the answer is we're going to stay the course.
Yeah, of course they are.
All right, so we're going to continue to be irrelevant then. And then for one of the few times tonight, Tom, I'm actually agreeing with you that we're going to squander this opportunity to become relevant in national politics. We're going to continue to be irrelevant because we're going to give our support to the Democrat Party, who totally looks over black people. Because like Joe said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And like Chelsea Handler stole 50 cents, because you're black, you can't vote for a Republican or you can't vote for Trump. So these are your white slave masters telling you they're going to take away your black card if you don't vote for them. So I agree with you, Tom. We're going to continue to stay irrelevant on the national stage. We're going to continue to do what we've done. There are a few people that are starting to carve off, which I'm excited about, because these are going to be the people who are going to lead us in the future. And hopefully someday we reach that tipping point where both parties have to compete and fight for our vote and deliver on doing some things. So we will see what happens. With that being said, we've got the answer to the question for tonight. And I'm going to give you the last word, Tom, to close us out. Go ahead.
We want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, every Wednesday at 9 o'clock p.m. Central for Black Men Speak, where we talk about the most provocative issues going on in our community and in our nation. We want to thank you for tuning in. Continue to let us know what you think. Give us your ideas in terms of things that you want to talk about. I guess by next week, maybe we don't have some answers to what's going to be going on, at least at Pennsylvania Avenue next year. But either way, it'll be a very interesting conversation. We look forward to having you and seeing you then. We want to thank you. Continue to fight the good fight.
That's right, folks. And don't forget to go vote if you haven't already voted. Thank you and have a good night.
Good evening, everyone.